And Dave Sussman back with you at Whiskey Politics, and you can find us on the Ricochet Network, our YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe and hit that subscribe button and get the notifications, and you can find us on America's Voice Network. And of course, all of your podcast applications, Apple, iTunes, of course, Stitcher, Google Play, and all the others. You know, we do a lot of different types of interviews here at Whiskey Politics, and as many know who are listening to this, we've done a lot of political interviews, we've had actors, we've had scientists, we've even had World Series poker players. But I've been really looking forward to this interview because we've got a gentleman today who really talks about everything from a macro perspective, how we all as individuals can improve our lives. And without getting into the granular with this introduction, I want to introduce somebody who flew all the way here from Australia just for this interview, maybe not, Michael Crossland, who is an inspirational speaker, worldwide known author, and you've probably seen his YouTubes and even on MTV. Welcome, Michael.
David, great to be here, mate. A little jet lagged, 18 hours on the plane yesterday, but great to be here, and what an amazing spot.
Yeah, it really is. It's a beautiful place. Now, you first of all, for our viewers, you do live in Australia. You were telling me you live on the east coast of Australia. Whereabouts is that?
We're in a beautiful little surfy village called Coffs Harbour, halfway between Sydney and Brisbane. So it's about 6 hours north of Sydney, about 5 and a bit hours south of Brisbane. So beautiful little coastal town.
Okay, all right. Well, it's a beautiful place. As I just mentioned to you, I've got family in Australia. I've been to Sydney and gone to the outback, and I love the country. I love the country. I've always said, in fact, every time I come back, I've always said, if I had to live anywhere else, it would probably be Australia. So.
It's good that you know a little bit about Australia, because we went out for dinner last night when we landed, and the lady asked me whether we ride kangaroos to school, whether we have animals over there, do we ride on the wrong side of the road, you name it, do you have pet kangaroos, do you ride crocodile, all sorts of crazy questions. So I'm glad you've been there. And you know,
I actually ate some roo.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had some roo steak and I had some camels. No, I went to this barbecue and I was like, really? And it was very steaky. It was like a New York strip. The camel was horrible, gamey.
Yeah, real gamey.
Very gross.
We just stick with cows and sheep. That's enough for me.
Well, welcome here, and I know that you're doing a whirlwind tour around not just California, but going back east, and also you've got a foundation that I guess you are going to be going down to Haiti. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get into it, but I have an orphanage and a school down there, and we're heading down there to spend some time with the amazing kids later in the week. So very excited about that, mate. It's great.
Wow. Well, thanks for fitting us in. All right, so you know, one of the things that really interested me and I guess it really led to us sitting down here and having this interview is because I watched some of your videos and I watched some of your speeches. You do a lot of speeches in front of corporations. You speak for a lot of different companies around the world. How did you become an inspirational speaker?
It was an interesting transition, I guess you could say, and a lot of people say that's just crazy. You took such a big risk to walk away from the corporate world. I had 600 staff, had 120 banks, had a big salary, and I was driven for a long time by the 3 Ps that I think destroy people. I was driven by power, privileges, and possessions. And in 2010, I finally hit rock bottom, and I say that with the utmost joy, I think, because sometimes in life we need to hit rock bottom before we make that choice to make the transition into truly living what life you should be living. And my mum and dad, they separated. I invested all of her money in the stock market because I thought that that was going to be the way that she would be able to take care of herself. I had lots of debt in Sydney because I had to make sure I had the fancy house and the fancy car and the fancy jewelry, and that was about 6 weeks before the GFC hit, and I lost all of my mum's money. She spent such a large portion of her life and obviously my life in hospital with me, with my health challenges, and I just felt like I failed my mum. I felt like I failed my family, and I was really disappointed with the man that I'd become because I was so driven by ego and arrogance, and I was so focused on the materialistic possessions that I thought were important in life. So I hit rock bottom. I got very unwell. I had bacterial meningitis. I got fluid on the brain, and I got to a point where I was just praying to God every night that I wouldn't wake up. I just didn't want to fight anymore. As your listeners will hear throughout this session, I've faced my fair share of challenges, and I've spent nearly a quarter of my life in hospital. And I just thought to myself, how many times does one man need to get kicked before you give me a chance of leading a normal life? And I realized then and there that the two things that I must focus on in life is the power of giving and defining what success is. And now I understand that success is not about how big the house is, even though it's a beautiful house, and it's and it's not driven by the amount of money we earn or the clothes that we wear, how big our bank account is. I think it's about how big our heart is. It's about getting out of bed every day and knowing in your heart that you can make a difference in somebody else's life. And the second thing that I realized I needed to understand and master was the whole gift of giving. And I thought for a long time the saying was, the more you give, the more you shall receive. But I understand now the saying should be, the more you give expecting nothing in return, the more you shall receive. And it's not about the materialistic possessions that we give, but it's about the passion and the purpose in why we give it that truly determines the outcome of our giving. And that's when I decided to walk away. I finally got out of hospital. I started to get clarity. I started to find my purpose, and I had a dream and a goal to make a global impact. And people laughed at me, told me I was crazy. And I love when people tell me what I can't do, because it makes me work really hard to show them that I can. And it's not about me trying to prove other people wrong, but it's more importantly about me trying to prove myself right. And for the last 7.5 years, I've been traveling the world, giving back and serving other people. And it's probably been the last 3 years where my life's gone really crazy. It was really challenging those first few years, knocking on doors and constantly getting them closed. But I think that every time you fail, you just get one step closer to succeeding. And the more you fail, the more you learn. The more you learn, the more you grow. The more you grow, the better version of yourself that you become.
This stick to itiveness, is that a word? Tenacity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This isn't something new for you. I think, based upon, and correct me if I'm wrong here, watching and listening to you, this came from your mother, this came from your childhood. Talk a little bit about, the first few years of your life.
Yeah, I was 11 months of age. I went to the doctor with my mum and my sister. My sister had an ear infection. And as we were leaving the room, I'm much more of a hugger. Don't really do the handshake thing. So I give the doctor a hug. His knee brushes my stomach. It was that simple. And my whole world changed. I was taken to the hospital. That night I was airlifted to Sydney Hospital. The following morning I was diagnosed with an incurable cancer of the central nervous system called neuroblastoma stage 4. Doctor said, no chance of survival, take your boy home. Allow him to live the next few months with his family because there's nothing that we can do. But like everybody here watching, listening, we all have choices. And the choices that we make each and every day can help reshape, remold and redefine our future. So my mum asked one question, and that was, I don't want to know what the chances are of my son dying is. I want to know what the chances are of my son surviving. The doctor said I had a 96% death rate and go home. But like so many of us, we're all filled with choices every day. And the choices that we make every day can help reshape, remold, redefine our future. And she made the choice to look at my life being not 96% empty. She chose to look at my life being 4% full. So I started chemo on my first birthday. My chemo cycle was 9 days on, 3 days off for nearly 3 years, until they told me that the tumour was building a resistance. It had taken over half of my body and I needed to have surgery. I went in to have surgery, and 6 hours later the doctors came out and said, we're sorry, we didn't get it all. There's now nothing that we can do. So my dad and my 3 older sisters, they were flown down to say goodbye to their boy. And the next day there was an American doctor. He came in. He was trialling a test drug called DTIC. They were going to trial it on 25 patients. And he wanted to know whether we wanted to be number 25. We had no idea what the side effects would be. We had to sign a waiver to prevent us from suing them if we were to die. And every patient on that drug was terminally ill. So we obviously said yes, because we believe that hope is one of the most powerful words in the English dictionary. So we started that drug at 9 a.m. on Tuesday morning. Within 24 hours, all 25 of us were transferred from the oncology ward to the burns unit. The after effects of this drug were so bad that we were completely covered from head to toe in blisters. What they would do is they would wrap us up in bandages and they would lie us in baths full of ice, trying to prevent our brains from frying. And sadly, within 1 month, 20 out of the 25 kids had died. And the second month began to burn my internal organs. I lost one of my lungs, my liver and my kidney were destroyed, the muscles around my heart began to deteriorate. But sadly, within 90 days of that drug, 24 of the 25 kids had died. And I say I'm one of the lucky ones, but I never say I'm one of the lucky ones because I'm still alive. I say I'm one of the lucky ones because I wasn't my mum. You know, my mum, she had it so tough. All I had to do is lie in bed and feel the pain, but she had to make a choice every single day to inject a drug into a child that has killed every single person that had ever taken it. So she's instilled some powerful philosophies in my life. She's certainly instilled resilience, determination, courage. And she's certainly cemented a message in my heart that goes, it is not the adversity in your life that defines you. It's how you deal with your adversity that allows you to live a remarkable life. I know everybody listening at home has a story. We all have pain, we all have suffering. And adversity, yes, it molds us. And yes, it shapes us. But it doesn't define us. How we deal with it defines us. And I've chosen in my life, continually through my ongoing challenges, to stand up, take control, and just do my best to make the world a better place than what I found it, and be the best version of myself.
It's an incredible story, and as I'm watching you and I'm seeing you here close up, your tears, they well up in your eyes as you're telling the story. It's not something you haven't told before, yet it still impacts you every time you tell about, your mom. And it pulls the heartstrings of anybody who's listening to this. From your standpoint, just as you are talking with people and you're making this connection with people, it's never diminished, is it, for you?
No, I know that I relive it every time, and every time I share it, I'm walking in the shoes, just slightly in such a brief period of time that she walked in, and I think to myself, I hope I never have to walk in those shoes. I hope I never have to experience that pain. And I think by the best way to become the best version of yourself is when you teach, you constantly are learning. Yeah. And every time I share my story, I'm constantly reflecting on that time, and that continually inspires me to get up when my body says, no, now's the time to rest. As I said to you off air before, 152 flights last year, 22 countries. And my health last year was very challenging, which I know we'll get into later in this discussion. But, I am constantly filled with optimism and resilience, reflecting back on the adversities and challenges that my mum had, giving me hope and giving me strength. When I was finally allowed to go home at 6 years old, the doctor said he'd never go to school, never play sport, be a housebound baby, and he'd never reach his teenage years because the after effects of this drug was so bad that my body was deteriorating. And my mum walked through the curtains and I said, "What did the doctor say?" And she said, "Oh, the doctors told me everything was going to be okay." My mum has carried the fear and the burden of her son dying her entire life because she wanted me to lead a normal life.
What an incredible story. Incredible mother.
Yeah.
Cheers to her. And, just by you talking about this and sharing the story with people around the world, it really is just a salute to her. And that's incredible. There really is no words for it. Now, going back to the tenacity and your approach to this, you had goals when you were a kid. You had funny goals for an Australian. I know this, but talk a little bit about where you're going tonight.
Well, my goal as a baby, my first goal as a baby was, I said to my mum, when I grow up, I want to be normal like everybody else.
Right.
I want to go to school. I want to play sport. I want to enjoy the simple things in life that people take for granted every single day. That was what I wanted. And she said to me, that dream's not big enough. You need to come up with a bigger dream. So the next day she came in and said, "What's your dream?" I said, "Not only do I want to be normal like everybody else, but one day I want to play baseball in America." And I remember she's like, "I kind of liked your first dream a lot more than your second dream. That was a lot more realistic, right?" And then when I got told I'd never be able to play sport, she allowed me to play sport. She let me go to school. She let me enjoy the simple things in life. Yeah. And I started playing the game that I loved, and that was baseball. And there was a lot of hiccups along the way. I had my first heart attack when I was 12. I was told I'd never play sport again. And the doctor said, "Your heart's too badly damaged." And my mum came in and I said, "What did the doctor say?" And she said, "Oh, the doctors told me that everything was going to be okay."
You were a good player.
She taught me something in hospital. She taught me that no one in your life is ever going to tell you what you can do. Mm-hmm. They'll only ever tell you what you can't do. Mm-hmm. And it's so easy for all of us to listen to that negativity and that pain and that hostility and the things that surround it, or you can just truly believe in yourself. And she believed in me. So 3 years after being told I'd never play sport again, I made the under-16 Australian Expos team. I got a chance to fly to America. I got a chance to achieve my dreams. When I was 17, I signed a scholarship to live in America and play baseball. I got a chance to play 100-plus games a year in front of big crowds down in Texas, and my life was an amazing journey. But as you know, and everybody listening knows, that life is like a roller coaster. You can get to a pinnacle point in your life and it can get taken away from you in a heartbeat. One bad choice, one bad decision, and your whole world can change. I never told my coach that I was sick because I never wanted to be treated any differently than anybody else. And you know, it's so sad in today's society. We wait until it's too late before we decide to change. Right? We wait until we're diagnosed with lung cancer before we stop smoking. We wait until we're diagnosed with diabetes before we change our diet. We wait until we lose someone that we love before we tell them that we love them. You know, I challenge everybody listening, once this episode's finished, of course, is to jump on their phones and text somebody and just let them know how much they mean to them. Just say, hey, I really care about you, I love you, thanks for being a great friend. And I guarantee you I know what they'll write back. They'll write back, what's wrong, with a question mark.
Right.
Because we only tell people how much they mean to us.
Yeah.
When it's too late, they will think you are dying or you've lost your job because simply we're sharing with them how much they mean to us. My heart couldn't cope in Texas. I couldn't keep up. And my health deteriorated rapidly. And my career at the age of 18 was over. I was sent back to Australia, never played baseball again. But I wouldn't change a thing. You know, I've learned so much. We learn far more from a loss than we ever learned from a win. And it was an amazing experience, and I still have a great passion for the game. I coach the under 16, under 18 Australian Expos team. We bring them out to America every year for a month, and tonight is the first chance I'm ever going to have of going to a playoff game. So I'm going to watch the playoff of the Dodgers Atlanta Braves game. So jumping out of my skin, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, it's going to be a good series. Hopefully they can make it a good series. It was a pretty much of a stomping the other night. Mm-hmm. I mentioned to you, you're a Houston fan. I was at the World Series Game 6 last year with the Dodgers in Houston. That was
Thank you for rubbing that in. That was very nice of you.
Well, you came back very nicely the next night. It was that was very depressing for us Dodger fans. But so you took another thing, right? You took this goal that you had for yourself, you forged ahead, you became one of the best of the best. I mean, it's extremely hard to do what you did, and no doubt in my mind you obviously would have continued that in your career in some way. You're passing on that knowledge now with baseball and to kids, and that's phenomenal. What happened after that?
I had to get a real job. Okay. So I think in the world that we live in, we have a plan A and we have a plan B, right?
Right.
I think a lot of people have a plan A, they get 60% of the way down plan A and they go, you know what, that last 40% is just a little bit too hard. So they jump over because they think the grass is greener in plan B. I'm a guy that's had a plan A and that's it. And I think that I give 110% at plan A, and when and if I fail at plan A, I just come up with another plan A. I think that's when you truly dedicate yourself to success. That's when you truly commit yourself to what you want to achieve in life, when you have no other option.
You're all in.
All in. Everything goes in. So I had to come up with another plan A. And I got a job in banking. Mm-hmm. Some people say it's the most boring industry on the planet, but I got a job in banking. I started off as a greeter, the guy that stood at the door and welcomes people as they come in. And it was about day 3 when a tall old guy come in. His name was Tom. He said, Mike, I'm the CEO. Let's have a chat. I had no idea what CEO stood for. I had no idea who Tom was. And I asked the lady, what does CEO stand for? She said, CEO stands for Chief Executive Officer. I was like, man, that sounds like an amazing title with lots of words, but still not real sure what he does. And then she told me he was the boss's 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 boss. So I thought, this guy's rich. I need to impress him. And I went in there and he asked me a really dumb question. He said, Michael, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? I was 19. All I cared about was who I was hanging out with on a Friday night. I had no idea where I was going to be in 5 years' time. But my mum, she always taught me, son, shoot for the moon, and if you miss, you'll end up in the stars. So I thought, right, now's my time to shine. Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? I shot straight down the barrel. I said, Tom, in 5 years' time, I'm going to take your job. And I would strongly recommend to everybody listening, don't ever say that to the boss's 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 boss, because it doesn't go down real well. I remember he said to me, I don't know whether that's arrogance or determination, but only time will tell. And me being a 19-year-old smart so-and-so, I responded with, you're right, Tom, only time will tell. But within 12 months, I was the youngest bank manager in Australia. 2 years youngest area manager, 3 years I was the youngest state manager, and in my 4th year of working with the organisation, I was the youngest national sales development manager for one of the largest companies in the world. 120 banks, wow. 600 staff, and every fortnight I would have a chat with my mate Tom, the CEO. And he would always ask me the same question, how's your staffing numbers going, how's your profit margins going, how's your productivity going, and I'd always end up asking him how his retirement fund's going, because I was ready for his job. But I was so driven by, as I said earlier, the 3 Ps that destroy people. You know, I was driven by power, privileges and possessions. I was so determined to make sure that I had the fancy house, the fancy car.
That was the game for you then, right? Your win for that was the possessions.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy the work?
I enjoyed the relationships that I was being able to create. You know, I was in a position where my job was to fail fast, fail forward, and fail often every day. My job was to instill energy, enthusiasm, motivation, and skills into my staff so they had my ability. My job was to make sure my staff had my ability so my job became redundant. That's all I had to do. And they were never going to move me out of the company with that type of philosophy. They were just going to move me up.
So I want to get to your lessons of all of this, but I think right here, you know, you're coming from a background of being a world-class athlete. You were going for a passion that you really had in your heart, and now you're doing something for the money, for the home, for the car. What would you say to those individuals that are doing the same thing but don't feel that fire, don't feel that passion?
I think it's important that everyone understands that there's nothing wrong with chasing the money. There's nothing wrong with chasing the materialistic possessions. Mm-hmm. But if that's your only key driver, you will burn out. You will lose that fire. You will lose that energy, and you need to find a greater purpose in what gets you out of bed to get that sale, to get that next contract, to get that new house, to get that new car, whatever it is. The reason why I was driven by it, because I wanted to create the perception that I was better and bigger than what I really was. I was so driven by my ego. My family had never had money, ever. The first pair of rip curl shorts I got was when I was in a senior at high school. And my dad took his old surfing shirt and ripped the Rip Curl logo off his shirt and had mum sew it onto my grey school shorts with fluoro orange thread. They were the worst Thailand knockoffs you have ever seen in your life. But
did they pass muster on Bondi? But
I wanted it, right? I wanted to create that, and I'd never had it. And I was so focused on this word success because I thought success was gonna bring me this materialistic wealth. But what I also thought it was going to bring me was it was going to bring me happiness. I thought by having the big house, I was going to be happy. By having the fancy car, I was going to be happy. By having the big bank account, I was going to be happy. Now, all of a sudden, I'd created this, and it was the one thing that it didn't bring me. I was so far away from happiness. I was away from my friends. I was away from my family. I was away from the people that meant so much to me. And that's when my whole world needed to change.
Some guy, some lady is listening to this on an airplane right now. They're doing 200,000 miles a year. They haven't seen their kids in 3 weeks. What do you say to them?
You know, my kids...
Because we've all been there, right?
Of course. And there's nothing wrong with that lifestyle. Right. Because that's what pays the bills. That's what gets you to where you need to be. That's right. That might be your ticket to your retirement. So it makes sense. But, you know, let me share a story. You know, there are three things in life you can never get back. And that's the time that you've missed, the moments that have gone, and the words after they've been said. And there's an amazing story about a man who works from home. And he's doing some pretty big hours from his office, right? And one afternoon, his son comes in. He says, "Hey, Daddy, any chance we could play catch this afternoon?" And Daddy says, "Sorry, son, I'm busy." And the next day, his little boy knocks on the door and says, "Hey, Daddy, any chance we could play catch?" And Daddy says, "Sorry, son, I'm busy." And the third day in a row, the little boy knocks on Daddy's door and says, "Hey, Daddy." Daddy says, "Son, told you yesterday, told you the day before, and I'll tell you again today, I can't play catch. I got work to do." And the boy says, "Oh, Dad, I wasn't going to ask you to play catch." He says, "Oh, what were you going to ask me?" He goes, "Oh, I was going to ask you how much money you earn an hour." And Daddy says, "That's a very rude question, son, but I earn $50 an hour. And the reason why I have to earn $50 an hour is so I can put a roof over your head and food into your tummy. So get out of my office, I got work to do." So a week goes by, 2 weeks, a month, 2 months goes by before that little boy comes in, knocks on Daddy's door. Knocks on Daddy's door and says, "Hey, Daddy." Daddy says, "Yes, son." He goes, "Daddy, over the last 2 months, I've been mowing lawns, I've been pruning trees. I've done every single chore that my mum has asked of me. And I've been able to raise $25. Daddy, I was wondering if I could give you this $25. And I was wondering if I could just have half an hour of your time and just seeing if we could play catch." You know, I look back on my life and I know that we'll get to it, but you know, I've been told all my life due to my health challenges that we will never be able to start a family. And I would do anything. I would give up every bit of success that I've ever had, every possession that I own, to have a healthy little boy come and knock on my door and say, "Hey, Daddy, any chance we could play catch?" You know, I think that when we begin to prioritize what's important in life, that's when we truly begin to live our life. You know, if that's your ticket to having freedom and peace and happiness with your family, to do 200,000 miles a year, then go all in. Mm-hmm. But please make sure when you're home to be present, connect, put your phone on flight mode.
Yeah.
Truly be the best person you can be. You know, a lot of companies, a lot of organizations, they get me in because they want me to inspire their team so they will be more productive. They'll make them more money. That's the outcome. But my desired outcome is to go in there and have them become a better mum, a better dad, a better friend, a better sister, a better brother. I just want people to become the best versions of themselves. I just want them to become better human beings. I want them to leave the world a better place than what they found it. And they can do that by getting out of bed and just striving to give back to the world and make a difference, regardless of whether it's helping an old lady cross the road, whether it's helping them unpack their groceries into the trunk of their car, whatever it might be. We have that innate ability, but also an incredible responsibility.
So going back in your, and this is fascinating here, in the trajectory of where you came from and where you are now, you were in the financial services industry. What happened? How did you end that?
It was when my mom and dad, they separated and I hit rock bottom. You know, I remember the analogy that I like to reflect on, and it was like I was the lowest I'd ever been. I was praying to God every night that I would die. I didn't want to fight anymore. And it was like I was in a well, you know, like a well with water in it. And I felt like I was just sort of paddling to keep my head above water. And I was using every bit of energy and every bit of effort I could to just keep my head above water. And there was a ladder right there, and all I needed to do was reach out and grab that ladder and climb myself up. And there was people on top of the well, and they're yelling down at me saying, just grab the ladder, it's easy, just grab the ladder, climb yourself out. And I think that we've all been in that space where you have an emotional challenge in your heart and people are like, here's the solution, but we're so deep in that hole, we can't hear it, we can't see it, we can't visualize it, and we ignore it. So I'm just paddling and paddling and paddling until I got to a point where I was like, you know what, enough's enough. And I gave up. And I floated down to the bottom of the well. And when I got to the bottom of the well, I realized the water was only this deep. And the metaphor I like to think of that is the darkest place that I've ever been in my life. The worst place I'd ever been. I could still breathe. And whilst ever I can breathe, I can get clarity. Whilst ever I get clarity, I get purpose. And then when I find my purpose, that's when my whole lives change. And that's when I realized all I need to do is dip down, touch the bottom, jump back up, grab the ladder and climb myself out. And that's when I started to focus on giving back to the world, trying to make a global impact. And that's when I decided to start my own charity called Frontier Projects, where every cent gets sent. I was so frustrated with so many other charities where you donate $30, $40 a month to provide drinking water to someone in Africa, and $35 or whatever it is gets chewed up in admin costs, and $5 goes to the child. Whereas I said, no, that's it. We've got 6 people on the board. We all chip in a few $1,000s a year. That covers our overheads. And we are truly making a global impact because every cent that gets donated gets sent. And that's when I went over to Haiti. I rebuilt a school for, at the time, 120 kids. Now there's 270 kids that go there. And then on the way back from rebuilding that school, I walked past an orphanage. And at this time, I was only dreaming about having children. You know, that was my goal.
Haiti's about as far from Australia as you can get. It's literally the opposite of the world. Why Haiti?
I was in Dunedin in Florida, working with the Toronto Blue Jays at the time at spring training.
Yes.
And a
lot of Haitians in Florida.
Yeah. Well, a buddy of mine rang me and said, hey, there's been an earthquake. Do you want to come to Haiti? And I thought he said Tahiti. So I was like, heck yeah, I'm all about Tahiti.
Which is only an hour's flight,
yeah, I'm pumped,
right,
you know.
Right.
Make sure you bring my surfboard. He's like, man, you're not going to need your surfboard in Haiti. I was like, where's Haiti? And then I Googled it. Earthquake hit, 316,000 people killed, 2.5 million people homeless, 10 million people that live there, unemployment rate of 70%, top 10 most dangerous countries outside a war zone. Thinking, what am I going to do with that? But then I realized that it was only an hour-and-a-half flight. And I thought maybe this is my calling. This is where I can make a difference. So we built that school because some of the kids were walking 4 hours of a morning and 4 hours of an afternoon to get an education. But many of the girls, they were getting raped on their way home every afternoon. And they would get up and go to school the next day knowing that that might happen to them of an afternoon.
This is horrifying. Because
they knew that that was the only way they could break the cycle. And that's why I think one of the greatest sayings that we need to live our life by is there are people in this world that would do anything to have your bad day. We all have a bad day, right?
Yeah.
So then when I came back from building the school, I walked past this orphanage. There was 25 kids there. You know, they had no clothes on. They weren't eating. It was horrible. And I said to this one little boy, I said, what's the best part about living here in the orphanage? He said, oh, the best part is I get a bowl of rice guaranteed every second day. I said, if that's the best part, what's the worst part? He said, oh, the worst part is over nighttime. because of a nighttime, that's when the earthquake hit, killed my mum, my dad, and both my brothers. He said, and where I sleep with a little tarp over my bed, and when it rains, I get soaking wet because it leaks really bad. He said, but it doesn't really matter whether it rains or not, I still get soaking wet because I share a bed with 2 little boys and both of them pee their pants. You know, I spend, David, about 7-8 months a year on the road. That's a lot of hotel rooms, right? And there are some times to myself that I complain just a little bit about the bed that I sleep in. You know, I went into a hotel the other night, I'm thinking, what do I need with 16 pillows? I don't need 16 pillows to go to bed. So I get rid of 15 of them.
Says every man in the world.
Put them on the ground, right?
His wife.
Yeah, and they form trip hazards when I try and go to the toilet at night time. And then I try and get in the bed, and I swear to you, I think the cleaner thinks that I am a cardboard cutout. Because they tuck the sheets in so flipping tight, but it turns my feet into flippers. I'm complaining because I got too many pillows.
And these are your worries.
And he's pumped that he gets a bowl of rice every other day.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that saying that it's not the adversity in your life that defines you, it's how you deal with your adversity that allows you to live a remarkable life. And that's what was my big turning point. That was my transition. I'm never going back to the corporate world. This is my dream and my desire. I had a goal to leave the banking world for 6 months to follow my passion, and 7.5 years later, here I am sitting in Malibu having a chat with you, feeling extremely blessed to live the life that I get to live.
The name of the philanthropy again for Haiti?
Frontier Projects.
And the website?
Frontierprojects.org.
Yep. Okay, frontierprojects.org. So, I mean, this is a huge shift from you because you were in the financial services industry, which is a pure capitalist. It's about, you know, dog eat dog and focused on winning and quarterlies and sales goals and everything else. Bam, bam,
Target.
Right? Target. And it's a treadmill.
Yeah.
Because January the 1st after your last year, you're only as good as what you're going to be this next year. So that was a really big transition for you. That led into where you currently are now, and you've been doing this for a few years, and that's speaking to folks. But you had some health challenges in between, right?
Oh yeah, plenty of health challenges. So my immune system is very poor. I have the inability to fight infection, bacteria. I've been sick now about 8 weeks, and I'm still here, you know. But in 2016 was one of the greatest years, but also one of the most challenging years of my life. In 2016, I finally got a chance to give back to my mum. You know, putting her in a trailer in 2009 was heartbreaking for me. You know, I truly felt like I failed as a man, as a provider.
The financial collapse happened. It impacted you financially. Your mom had to end up in a trailer? Yeah,
I invested, when my mum and dad separated, I invested all of her money in the banking sector, in the share portfolio market, and then the GFC hit and I lost it all. So she went into a trailer. So in 2016, I got a chance to put a pink ribbon on a brand new door to a brand new home. And to give back to my mum was, without a doubt, one of the greatest days of my life.
I've been to Australia. Australian real estate isn't cheap. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, thank you. No, it was a very special day, and to hear the tone of voice that she uses on the phone now, to see her playing in the garden.
You're giving back.
Makes me very proud of the man that I've become. And it was because of those hard days. But later that year, my health deteriorated rapidly. My wife said I needed to go and get checked. So I finally did after she booked the appointment. And unfortunately, the doctors found 4 tumors in my throat. They told me that I needed to slow down because my tomorrows weren't guaranteed. And I think that that's one thing we all have in common, right? No one's guaranteed tomorrow. I remember driving home and my mum called me and she said, "Oh, what did the doctors say?" And I finally got a chance to return the favour. After all those years of her telling me that everything was going to be okay, I finally got a chance to tell her that everything was going to be okay. As a 32-year-old man, I had to plan my own funeral. And I did a video to my wife saying goodbye because I thought that this was it. I thought now was my time. I remember being so scared of dying, and I guess I'm just so fortunate and so blessed that I replaced my fear of dying with my faith in God, and that carried so much weight through those challenging periods. You know, I remember going into surgery and my mum had no idea where I was going. She had no idea how much fear and how much worry we had. When I came out of surgery, they had managed to remove 3 out of the 4 tumours, and the 4th tumour is still wrapped around my vocal cords, so there's nothing they can do about it. But I've realised, David, in my life that the quality of one's life is not dictated nor determined by the amount of days that we live on this earth. I think it's determined by what we fit into those days that allows us to live a remarkable life. And I know that when my time's up, my tank's going to be on empty. There's going to be nothing left in the reserve tank. I'm doing everything I can to get out of bed every day and make a difference in somebody else's life. And I know you're going to ask me about it in a minute, but I have a greater purpose now. I have someone else that inspires me so much, and that's...
Well, tell us, since you brought it up.
Yeah,
it's going to get there.
I apologise in advance, especially to everybody at home, but this is still very raw. The one thing that I wanted to do before I died was to be a dad. That was just such an amazing gift, if that could ever happen. And that was the one thing they said would never happen due to everything that I've gone through. And we tried for 5 years through IVF, and finally we were blessed to fall pregnant. And we were due to have a baby in February of this year. And on the 8th of December last year, my wife fell in a lot of pain, and then we realized she was dilated, and then her waters broke. And on the 12th of December last year, we were blessed with a beautiful little boy weighing just under 3 pounds, who was very unwell. He arrived 10 weeks early, and he had a horrible illness, and he went straight onto a lot of medication, a lot of drugs. He went to intensive care unit level 3, where a lot of the babies go to die, and he was really struggling, and it was horrible. And then about 4 weeks later, he started to get better and stronger, and we were so excited and so delighted. And then we were airlifted back home to our local hospital, which was amazing, and we thought, this is just a miracle, it's incredible. And then when we landed back in Coffs Harbour, he started to get really unwell again, and they told us that he had picked up an infection. They thought he had an illness called sepsis, which is a blood disease, and they gave us 4 days with our little boy. And we were immediately airlifted back to Sydney. He stopped breathing twice on the plane ride. He was resuscitated, and I went and planned his funeral. I was ready to say goodbye to our beautiful little boy. But it was the first time in my life where I finally walked a day in my family's shoes. It was the first time that I had truly understood the pain that my mum had felt for so long. And I realised that I would do anything to be lying in that bed again. It was easy for me to lie in bed. It was hard for everybody standing around it. And he just wouldn't quit. And he got stronger and stronger every day. And then several months later, we finally got to take our sweet little boy home. And now he's 9 months old. He craps more than we can imagine. He eats more than we can imagine, and we love him more than we could ever imagine.
It's incredible. What was the turnaround in hospital for him?
He just never quit, and God heard our prayers every day, and that was just remarkable. To fall pregnant, to go through all those challenges and those pain, and then for him to be able to come out of that hospital and come home was just the greatest day, the greatest gift that a man could ever ask for. And so many people ask me now, who inspires you? And obviously my mum inspires me dearly and greatly every day to keep fighting and keep striving to be the best that I can possibly be. But my son keeps me fighting to stay alive, because I want to be there when he goes to school. I want to be there when he has his first baseball game. Yeah. I want to play catch with him in the backyard. I want to be there when he graduates. I want to be there when he goes to college. I want to be there when he finds his true love. I just want to be the best dad that I could possibly be.
Michael, somebody asked me recently, maybe even one of my sons, who I respect. And I was trying to think of an individual. And I respect a lot of different people. But I responded this way, and I said, the person that gets back up. Because everybody gets knocked down. You've been knocked down so many freaking times in your life.
Yeah.
not to bad decisions or being unlucky, but a lot of things that are just completely out of a human's control.
Yeah.
Bad health. Yet you keep getting up, and you're now flying around the world and you're sharing this message with people. When you're talking to people in audiences, and I've seen some of your speeches, what is the response that you're getting from people right now?
I am a very humble man, and I am extremely blessed and extremely grateful for the opportunities that I get, and to receive standing ovations and to have lines and lines of people afterwards that want to come and give me a hug and get photos and get my autograph on my book is something so surreal. I still need to pinch myself, because I am no pro athlete. I'm no famous actor. I'm no hero. I'm just an ordinary old Australian that's faced my fair share of adversities, and I am incredibly privileged every day to get out of bed and do what I do. I've been lucky to receive messages from all around the world, and recently I received a letter from a lady who heard me in Denver, Colorado, and the letter started with, "I used the rope to play tug of war." And I had no idea what this letter meant. And I read the letter, and it went on to tell me that sadly she was molested and beaten badly by her father. And when she told her mother, when she finally built the courage up to tell her mother, she kicked her out of the house, and she lived on the streets. And this was at a juvenile detention center type of arrangement where I was speaking. And they were out on some release, and they were staying in hostels or hotels or something, and she had gone down that morning to the hardware store and bought a heap of rope, and she tied it up in the cupboard, and she had planned to kill herself. And the lady had come into her room and said, no, you can't stay in the room, you need to come and hear this guy from Australia. And she said, no, I'm not well, I'm going to stay here and rest. And they said, no, this guy's flown all the way from Australia, you're not hearing me, you're coming. And long story short, she came down, she heard me speak, and because she was quite a large lady, she decided to go back, use that rope to play tug of war, and everyone wanted her on the team because she was a big girl, she had a bit of extra weight, and she won that tug of war challenge. So for me, every time I get a chance to stand on stage, my goal is obviously just to make an impact on just one person's life. And if there's a chance for me to save someone's life, to have them look at life differently, to have them go home and become a better father, a better mother, for you to take away from this interview the fact that you just want to go home this afternoon and hold your kids a little tighter. I may never meet your kids, but I only hope that I can have an impact on you so that you become the best dad you can be, which has a positive impact on them. And the domino effect happens where we continue to pay it forward and do a good deed and try and help other people.
Yeah, it's such an important message. It really is. Something that I've seen as a trend, especially in the past 5 years, started maybe a decade or so ago, but it's now ubiquitous, and that is the bubbles that we all live within now regarding technology. Okay, we're all on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever it may be, and the kids today, your kid isn't old enough yet to be there, but I've got an 18 and 13-year-old, and it's this the whole time.
Yeah.
And you can go to your shopping mall and you see pods of 13-year-olds just walking like this.
Yep.
Who are you talking to? Your friends are right next to you.
Yep.
Right? What are you seeing right now as far as the impact on relationships and also, more importantly, self-worth and ego? What is happening right now?
I think the determination of one's happiness and success is based on how many likes they get on a photo on Instagram. The stories of people putting up videos or pictures of themselves, and within 10 minutes, if they don't have enough likes, they take it down because they don't think it's right. That's so shallow, that's so empty. One of the sayings that I live my life by is that your head needs to be where your body's at. Too often in life, we're so fearful of what might be tomorrow, we're regretful of what could have been yesterday, we forget to focus on what is right now. And I think Google says we look at our phones more than 600 times a day. How can we truly be present? How can we truly have an impact on this world, regardless of the way you want to have an impact on it, when you're completely glued to your phone? And the question you ask about what impact do I think social media and technology is having on relationships, I think that it's destroying them. I think people have the inability now to effectively communicate with people because the easier way to do it is to put up a comment on Facebook, to put up a comment on Instagram, whatever it might be. They have lost the ability to form long-term relationships with people because everything's short, sharp, snappy.
Right.
You know, I think back in the old days, we had a choice of a morning, right? When we woke up next to our partner, we had a choice to roll over and give them a kiss and a hug. Mm-hmm. We had a choice to get up and get on with our day. Mm-hmm. Now we have another choice. We can roll over, kiss them. We can get up and get on with our day, or we can roll over and check our emails. You know, people are getting up at 5:30 in the morning responding to emails. You know, I remember sharing a story with a lady, and she heard me speak. She came up afterwards. She was crying, and she said, you know, I've got to tell you, you really hit me hard today around that whole be present thing. And I was like, oh, why? And she said, 6 months ago, I was at home and I yelled at my husband because he left the towel on the floor in the bathroom. On his way to work, he had a car accident and he died. The last thing that I told my husband was that he was a lazy so-and-so because he didn't pick up that towel. You know, and I want people listening at home or in the car, on the planes, to reflect on what was the last interaction you had with somebody that you loved. You know, if you think that your life ended right now, you had the inability to communicate with any person that you loved because your life was over. Would you be proud, one, of the legacy that you have left? Would you be proud of the way you ended that conversation, that relationship? You know, there is so often we get to a dinner table and people are playing on their phones. You know, a lot of people in life, they have a to-do list, right? A lot of CEOs, a lot of execs, a lot of athletes, they all have a to-do list. I'm all about a to-stop list. We need to come up with 5 things that we're going to stop doing every day. And one of those things is social media. You will not catch me on my phone between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. That's it. It's a to-stop moment. That's my opportunity to be present. That's my opportunity to be a great partner, a great friend, a great dad. It gives me a chance to switch off from the world, because what's going on in Facebook should not have an impact on me. Whether the neighbour's getting a photo of himself in the jacuzzi, or whether our friend's out taking a photo of their food, the fact is that has no relevance to me. That has no impact on me. What has an impact on me is how I communicate with my wife, how I communicate and emotionally connect with my son.
So is it as bad in Australia today as it is in the States?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, no question.
So what happens to this next generation? You're in your 30s?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a generation younger than you. My oldest is 18, Generation Z, I think it's called. And I see it with a lot of his friends. My son, not so much. He's not so bad because of me, but he's smart too. It's not because of me. But my question for you is, what happens to that next generation? Because when your self-worth is based upon likes or clicks or whatever it may be, are they missing some central quotient to be happy within themselves without that eventually?
No question. No question. And I think it's very, very sad. You know, I love the saying, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I think it's so important in the world that we live in today that we must evolve, we must adapt, we must embrace change. You know, there's a saying, if you continue to do what you've always done, you'll continue to get what you've always got. That saying is no longer relevant in the world we live in. If you continue to do what you've always done, you will not continue to get what you've always got. You will continue to lose market share. You will continue to fall behind the times. You will not grow because the world is changing. I go back as a child, my dream and goal in life, play baseball, was be a police officer, be a fireman, whatever it might be. That was my dream. I went to a recent education thing with some kids and asked them, what's your dreams and goals? I had 9 of them tell me they want to grow up to become YouTubers. One of them, 4 or 5 of them said, I want to become gamers. That's relevant now. There are people that are making millions of dollars out of it. So we can't knock people's desire and vision around their goals, but I think it's important that we take control and consume a little bit. You know, I know parents that are back home right now. My sister is one of them. She does 1 charge a week for their kids. That's it. You have 1 charge on your iPad.
1 charge on your iPad.
1 charge on your phone.
You know, it's funny you mention it, because we had a guest on recently as an economist, and he wrote a book, and he mentioned that there's actually a career option right now to teach people how to play video games. And there's people that sit on YouTube and they don't play video games, they watch other people play. Yeah. It's a major pastime right now for people. It's pretty scary.
And it chews your brain up.
I think so. I do. You know, you've got such a wealth of knowledge, such a wealth of experience, highs and lows in your life. We get towards the end here. What is one of the major things, beyond obviously what you've already discussed today, that you really hope people that attend your speeches, your lectures, take away?
Yes, a couple of points. I think one is the worth of all human life comes not what we do or who we know, but by who we are. I think it's about having that inner burning desire to just become the best versions of ourselves. I think that the power of perspective is such a powerful thing. You know, that saying, I cried when I didn't get a new pair of shoes until I saw a boy that had no feet. You know, sometimes we need to step out of our own shoes and look at life through someone else's eyes for us to truly begin to understand how remarkable our world can be. And another thing that I think is really important, and I think the world that we live in today has lost a little bit, and that is we must give without remembering and receive without forgetting. You know, the more that we can give and just disregard that piece of giving. You know, nowadays, if I buy you lunch today, then my expectations of you tomorrow is to buy me lunch. That's the way the world works. But if I buy you lunch today and then you buy someone else lunch tomorrow and then they buy someone else lunch the next day, that whole pay it forward thing is so truly powerful. And I think that is a real key component to your happiness. Is, you know, wanting to get out of bed and help other people, wanting to make a difference in other people's lives, not wanting to get the most amount of likes, the most amount of comments, the most amount of followers. You know, and it's tough in the world that we live in today because a lot of people judge your value based on how many people are going to watch this interview, how many people listen to the podcast, how many people follow you on social media.
Advertisers certainly do.
What's incredible now is that, you know, someone said to me that day, oh, you've only got like 8,000 followers on Instagram. I was like, does that justify my value?
We just joined Instagram, by the way. You can find Whiskey Politics on Instagram.
Yeah, get on it. Like it, right? But then all of a sudden, I share a video and it's had 25 million hits.
Yeah.
Does that make me a better person now because I've had more likes, more views, more followers? Not at all. You know, and I think that we need to humble ourselves.
What is it about that adrenaline rush, though, that it keeps people coming back? It's like Pavlovian, right?
It's the 3-letter word that destroys people. It's ego.
Ego.
That's the root. You know, they say money is the root of all evil.
Yeah.
I think ego is very close second. Yeah. You know, when we disregard ego and we have humility, we have joy, we have substance, and we want to get out of bed and serve other people, I think that's when we become an amazing human being that gets to love every day. You know, I put a post up the other day saying I've spent a quarter of my life in hospital and I wouldn't change a thing. And I truly mean that because every time I've been knocked, it's given me a lesson. And now I wake up with so much joy every day, with so much gratitude and so much appreciation that God has given me a great gift and a privilege and a bonus to get out of bed, take a breath, you know, and enjoy the world that we live in.
Wise words. Michael Crossland, where can people find you? Give us your websites, your Instagrams, your Facebooks.
Yeah,
Twitters.
my website, michaelcrossland.com, and obviously I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all those sort of things. But
and your book, we're going to put a link up to it. Mention that real quick.
Yeah, the book is called Kids Don't Get Cancer. It's got a very controversial title. When I was diagnosed with cancer, my mum said to the doctor, no, that can't be right. Kids don't get cancer. My mum told Dad. Dad said, that can't be right. Kids don't get cancer. The flow-on effect happened, and then my mum said one day, when you grow up and you make an impact on the world, you're going to write a book, and it's going to be called Kids Don't Get Cancer. And now it's a bestseller across 6 countries around the world, and we donate all the profits to charity. So
congratulations.
Thank you.
Wow. And the wife is good?
Wife's good. Every day's good.
Awesome. Michael Crossland, thank you so much for joining us here in Malibu. Enjoy the baseball game tonight.
Can't
Playoffs.
wait.
Go Dodgers. Enjoy it. But by the way, Dodger Stadium, I've been to probably about 20 stadiums around the country. It's still one of my favorites all time. It's beautiful.
Can't wait.
You'll enjoy it. So thank you so much for joining us. And folks, follow Michael on all of the social media, Instagrams, Twitter, everywhere else. And you can also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Find us on iTunes. Give us that 5-star rating. That helps others find us. And on ricochet.com and America's Voice Network. Again, very special thanks to Michael Crossland joining us. And we'll be back again very soon at Whiskey Politics.